Hey, you guys, it's me, Bonnie, your host of the Grieving Girl podcast. And today we have my dear friend, Casey, joining us. Yay!
Hi, Bonnie.
Welcome to, I have to come up with like a fun creative name for like the Grieving Girl quotes virtual studio because usually I'm like, welcome to the Grieving Girl couch, but you're not on it. But at
I
least
know
it's
it.
in the background.
I have a couch. It's right
Yeah,
behind me.
we both have couches.
We do, and they're fun
Yeah.
colors too.
Yeah, well, we can't just be
Got
having
my
like
no,
basic.
no,
Neither
no
one of us
basic
is.
couches. Yours is
Yeah.
emerald, and mine is mustard.
There
With our
you go.
powers combined.
Yes. Um, so welcome in. For anybody who's listening, watching, you're just tuning into this episode or you're new to us. Basically, this season is called "Tis the Season to Be Griefy." All about just the holidays and how they probably stink. If you're like, actually, the holidays are great. I would love to talk to you and find out,
Lucky
like,
you.
right, how we have reclaimed those. Um, but yeah, we are kind of just doing like a mini holiday season, trying to, share tips, tricks, words of wisdom, experiences, amongst fellow grievers. So, Casey, why don't you introduce yourself to the people?
To the people. Hi, everybody. My name is Casey Farah. Bonnie and I met many years ago doing shows together. Um, and I have since moved like a million different times since those shows. I've lived in
Yeah.
like 1,000 states. I'm very tired. Um, and I kind of took a final bow from doing theater and really leaned into what was my like side hustle for a long time, my art company, and this side hustle turned into the main gig. And now I live in Virginia. Um, in the years since Bonnie and I were tapping together, I got married, and this year I had a baby. Um, and that made the whole grief process even more wild because in the time that like my job shifted, my the whole world shifted with COVID, getting married, having a baby. In between all of that chaos, I lost my mom to cancer. And I think it was like 2 weeks after you lost your mom, Bonnie.
It was like very close to, which I was like, I
Yep.
texted you and I was like, oh wow, I hate that our last text messages, because we just like DM'd.
Uh-huh.
I
Yeah.
was like, we're from that time period. I was like, no, we gotta change that. We gotta bump those
You
to
gotta
the top.
talk about like rewriting, just like, reclaim your text threads.
Yes, truly. Yeah, it was like shortly after.
Because you were blindsided
Mhm.
and I wasn't, and I don't know what's better or what's worse. Um, I,
I think they're both horrible in their own ways.
yeah, which is
Yeah.
which is what grieving is all about, is that like there
Hmm.
is no like my grief is worse than your grief, or like my mother's death is worse than your mom's death. Like, mm, we're
Right.
still 30 something years old without our moms, and it's the worst. And
Yeah.
every single person that I tell, like, oh yeah, my mom died, everybody just goes, oh, I'm so sorry. And like,
Literally.
and like, sure, they don't know quite what to say because like that's nice that they say I'm sorry, but like I then what I think my response always is, me too. Like, uh-huh,
It's
it's
okay.
the worst. It's the absolute worst. But yeah, I don't know because I my mom was diagnosed with melanoma, um, and it was, they said it was going to be fine with some surgeries, and then surgeries came and went, and they were like, oh, actually, and then infusions, and they were like, that'll be, and then no, actually, and then it metastasized. Um, and so you talk about like rewriting memories and this time of year being like the holidays are really hard.
Hmm.
Um, for many, many reasons. Election day, oddly enough, is really hard because election day of 2020 was the day, and I don't ever want to trigger anybody, so but we're talking about grief, so let's go. Um, my mom had her first grand mal seizure on the day after election day.
Mm,
Um, and before that, there were no seizures. We thought the melanoma was just in her armpit. We didn't know it had traveled. And election day, she didn't know that Biden won.
mm.
And so she, had her seizure and woke up in the hospital later. And Dave and I were in New Hampshire. We got the phone call. It was like it was the worst day. And
Yeah.
we kept joking with her throughout the rest of the year that when she woke up in the hospital, she thought we were joking with her that Biden won. Um, and so she kept saying, she was like, "No, you're joking. Like, you're sure he won." We're like, "Yeah, we're positive it's gonna get better." She's like, "You're sure he won?" And it's weird coming around to another election that it feels mean that it's been
Mm,
a whole presidency, a whole
mm.
4 years of just like the chaos and the change that's happened since the last election to this election. My mom's been gone because she wasn't after her initial seizures, and when the melanoma metastasized to her brain, my mom was gone. Um,
Yeah.
she was physically still here, but the warm fuzzy like text me in the morning. She was an amazing writer,
Hmm.
and she would write. She called it something more to open, um, and she would write every Sunday like without fail, and it was for anybody who just like needed a little something to like motivate them or keep them going. And she
Oh,
stopped
that's
writing.
cool.
Yeah. And so after she was gone, we have like years of like Sunday posts to read.
Mm.
Um, so in that way, she like left a lot of her legacy literally written down. Um, but it changed so fast that
Right.
all of a sudden the mom that was like a mom to all my friends and my siblings and their kids and just everybody was on election day 2020. Um, she started to disappear,
Mm.
and then the holidays that year when she was still here but really sick, and then the holidays the next year when she wasn't there. Oof, it's hard to rewrite when you're still, I don't know, still trying to process. And I think
Right.
we'll never stop processing.
Right.
Um, yeah,
It's
so
funny that you mentioned the election because I like submitted my vote and I got like weirdly, I had like a grief wave.
yeah,
Because it was kind of the same thing. Like I remember like 2020 him winning. Like my mom, she wasn't like very political, but like she
right,
definitely like had her opinions and
sure.
the last three have been so like different than the ones.
It's not politics anymore. It's you're a human being. Yeah,
Right. So it's
yeah,
just funny. I'm like, from the last three where I was like a full blown adult, like very,
sure.
I know what's going on.
Yeah,
We would just always talk about it. And she's voted in the last one. She's not here to vote for this one.
yeah.
So it's just like very weird. Like you said, like
It's
so
a
much
weird
has
first.
changed.
Yeah, so much
Yeah.
has changed, but also there are so many firsts that you experience. Like, this is my first birthday without my mom. It
Right.
comes within that year. This is my first
Right.
Christmas without my mom. It comes within that year. That it's trippy to have 4 years go by
Yeah.
and have a new first. Like I'm experiencing that like every time my daughter does something.
Right.
It's and I it's she's a tiny squishy baby, but and it sounds really cheesy to say it, but she's teaching me so much
Mm.
about reframing, because I, I always in my entire life I've had this like weird fascination with like firsts and lasts, that
Mm.
like because I've lived so many places, I feel like that's almost like hammered that kind of fascination home, that like I know that like the last day I'm going to be living in this apartment is this day and I will never see it again.
Mm.
And so, and then, or like, okay, this is the first day that like, I don't know, I'm starting this new job, or the first day that like I'm going on this date and I end up marrying the guy. That like firsts are if you clock them, it's cool. And
Yeah.
lasts feel really like momentous if you acknowledge them.
Hmm.
And for so long after my mom died, firsts were awful. They were she died a week to the day after my birthday.
Hmm.
And so my 20 or no 20 my 31st birthday um was terrible. I It was so sad because my mom was dying in our arms, but then I had to wait a whole year for the first birthday without my mom because the last birthday with my mom was so devastating, and first and last were really complicated. But now with my daughter, firsts are good
Yeah.
for the first time in a long time. That, like, oh my gosh, it's your first tooth. Oh my gosh, it's the first time that, like, you stood up. Stop doing that. Like,
Yeah.
firsts are like really exciting. And I think for a long time, um, firsts meant without my mom.
Yeah.
And now firsts mean with Penny.
Yeah.
So
That's beautiful.
it, I
I
think
mean, it
so.
is. Yeah,
I
because it's
think so.
like,
Yeah.
I mean, like, I don't have that. So, like, maybe one day I'll have that. But I'm like,
Yeah.
no, that's like a beautiful thing to have, to be able to be like, this, this horrible kind of situation of all the firsts and even like the
Hmm.
last. I mean, I feel like with your mom, because of the length that she
Yeah.
had, cancer or whatever, it's like you also like can almost clock like go back of like those were the lasts and
Yep.
like know that those were the
I
last.
know exact. Yeah. And
So to
because
be able to like now
yeah.
reframe that, like you were saying with Penny,
Yep.
it's like that's a beautiful thing, and like it's like what she would want you to do,
And
all that classic stuff.
and that's
But
the
at least you
hard.
found that on your own.
And the thing is, I think that is one of the harder parts of not having my mom here. That um, I don't know if I need to deal with it better or if this is just me. But I don't. I smile and nod and am grateful for when people give very genuine, um, you know, comforting remarks of like, oh, your mom would be so proud of you. Or like, oh, your mom would love that Halloween costume.
Hmm.
I know, but like, how do you know? Like, I
Right.
wish you, and there's no amount of wishing she were here or like, I don't know. It's just, it's hard because I'll never, we'll never know. Maybe she would have
Right.
hated it. I would have rather her be here and hated that Halloween costume. But I need to take it, I think, a little bit easier when people say like, "Oh, your mom is so proud of you." Like, no,
But it
she's
is
not. She's
infuriating.
dead.
It's
She's
it's
not. She's
very
dead. And like, I
I
hate
like
it.
it is so annoying to hear, even though it's again, it's like everyone's it's never with malintent, but it is
No, it's meant with
so
such kindness.
annoying sometimes. But then
Yeah.
it's like, well, what do you expect people to say? But it's also just like
I don't know what the
it's
alternative is.
right. And at the end of the day, it's like that's I think just one of those like very nuanced pieces of grief
Yep.
and
Yep.
humanity, and
Yeah.
empathy, where it's like, yeah, I know she would like
Hmm.
it, but
I know she'd like it, but I don't know that she's proud of me because I can't text her. That like I don't know that, she's watching over me because like
right,
she's not. I like to
yeah,
think she is. Every time I see a rainbow, in my head, I'm like, there's my mom. She sent me that sign. But then the like sciency part of my brain is like, no, she didn't send you a sign. It's because it's raining over there and the light is refracted and that's why there's a rainbow. And I'm like,
yeah.
come on. I
That's
needed this.
and that's where I say like if that's what you feel is your sign, then that is your
Yep.
sign.
Yeah.
Because we only have so many things to cling to. I
No.
always tell people when people are like,
Cling.
I'm
Cling
not into
away.
that stuff. I'm like, well, that's all I got. So,
That's yep. Because I
uh,
can't call her. I'm going for rainbows.
exactly.
I think my dad and my brothers, we all kind of like had like a silent like, you good? You good? With like, okay, it's not ladybugs, it's not hummingbirds, it's not cardinals. We good with rainbows? And we like there
You're
was
like,
almost like a
cool.
collective like, so when we all see a rainbow, we agree.
Yes.
And I think it helped because it gave us like my daughter is, she can wear whatever she wants when she picks it out, and like her room can be whatever she wants it to be. But when she's tiny and my husband and I are choosing, there is just rainbow shit everywhere because my mom's not here to buy her stuff. So
Right.
instead, she's got a little rainbow sweater, and I'm like, that's your Nana sweater. And like,
Cute.
because I feel like we've earned it
It,
in the grief and in the silence and the space where our moms should be.
hmm
We've kind of gotten a little token that we get to put in the machine every time of just saying that like it might not make sense to anybody else, but that was my mom, or she would have done
Absolutely.
this. And
hmm
so we have like a little bag of tokens that just like never run out. And if if that means helping us deal with our grief or our sadness or that just hole in our heart,
hmm
um, it's something we've earned that we never wanted in the first place.
Literally.
Yeah.
No, thank you, but here
I
we
didn't
are.
I didn't want this bag.
Um, well, we're gonna segue. Let's segue that
Let's do
into the
it.
holidays. So, like, are
Mm.
there things that like your mom was like really hardcore into with either any of the like Thanksgiving, Christmas, I mean, any
Yeah.
holiday of any throughout the year where she was like very hardcore that you feel like, especially, I mean, now that you've got Penny, where you're
Yeah.
like, funny enough, I didn't do that year one because it was like too
Mm-hmm.
sad, but now
It's
that I
too hard.
have a
Yeah.
little girl, I want her to experience that. Do you have like things
Sure.
like that in mind?
I think, yeah, definitely. The first year without my mom was kind of more about making sure my dad was okay.
Mm,
Um, because not only did, I lose my mom, but I still had my partner. And when I was crumbling, I'm so lucky that my husband was the support system that I didn't have to even ask for. He just intuited everything that I needed. Um, and I know how lucky I am, and he has continued to be the same with Penny, with both of us being parents. And I know that in grief, that's not always something that people have, is a partner. Um, and even if they do have a partner, they don't always get it. So
yeah.
I think in the space that I knew how lucky I was, my dad lost his buddy,
hmm
um, and was living in the house where they had, 30 something years of memories. It was the house where she died. She actually died in my childhood bedroom. So I'll unpack that trauma one day. Never. Um, just gonna. It's like that scene in The Office where Jim and Pam buy Jim's parents' house, and Pam's like, "Do we have to go in this room?" And Jim just goes, "No, we'll just board that up."
Yes.
Um, Sometimes I have to go in that room because the attic is through there and you can get things out.
Yeah.
But no, in my head and my heart, I just board that room up.
Yeah.
Um,
I can't imagine
no, I
that.
don't. Mm-mm.
I like if you think that I'm like ever freely going into a hospital, I like sometimes I'll walk
Oh,
past the hospital
yeah.
that everything happened and I like can smell the sheets or
Mm,
something. And I
no,
like physically nauseated and I'm
no,
not even inside near it. So
nope,
yeah, I can't really
no,
imagine that.
no.
But I don't
It's a
blame you
lot
for
of
being like, maybe sometime later. Maybe
maybe
later.
later. I think for me, a lot of like exposure therapy is how I've
Mm,
gotten through a lot of
mm-hmm.
things, because I've I've had to. I haven't wanted to, but I've had to. And it's if I do it for other people, it's a lot easier than doing it for myself.
Mm,
And then I can kind of get past the thing and then look back and be like, oh, I did it. That like the first Christmas in the house where my mom died, I didn't want to be there. But the
right.
alternative was my dad was alone and wasn't going to decorate the Christmas tree, was going to like, what, sit and watch 24 hours of a Christmas story alone? No, we weren't going to let that happen. So
Right.
instead, I we were there. We unpacked all the ornaments. We listened to, my mom was obsessed with John Denver, like in an unhealthy way, just like loved him. So we listened to the John Denver and the Muppets Christmas album, like on repeat, and we cried and we made fun of my mom, even though she wasn't there to like defend herself. Um, but like in those moments, like I had to use the shower where I like bathed my mom when she was sick because
Yeah.
that was where you had to shower. And like I had to have Christmas there. And so I think it was really like rip the band-aid off and with things that I didn't want to do. So it
Mm.
made space to do things now that I do want to do. Because the hard part has kind of already, the hard part's already been really hard. So now
Sure.
I get to kind of pick and choose, like, we did a bunch of things to honor my mom in her absence, but now it's more of celebrating them, hopefully. Um, I think this Christmas is going to be so beautiful, but also really hard, because I was kind of just getting used to my mom not being here.
Sure.
And now there's like a whole new batch of
Mm.
shit. Like, uh, instead of it being just another year to tack on to like, wow, it's been 3 Christmases. Wow, it's been this. Now it's the first again.
Right.
And so I think in that it's the whole new pattern of rewriting instead of like first year helping my dad,
Hmm.
first year, listening to John Denver and trying to get through the album and not cry. Now it's the first year without my mom as Penny's grandma.
Right.
Um, and so in that way, I just kind of have to like bite the bullet and say, it sucks. Like, okay, like shitty feelings, you are allowed here, sit on this side of the room. Please don't ruin it for the other people that are here.
Right.
That there's an amazing Elizabeth Gilbert analogy that she talks about fear, and about how fear is allowed in the car, but it's not allowed to drive, and it's not allowed to even like turn on the music. Um,
Hmm.
you're allowed to be in the car, and I think grief is the same way. Um, you can't make it get out. It is like
Right.
always part of you. We didn't choose it, but it's like the straggler in the back seat that you're like, stop it. You're not allowed to drive. I
Yeah.
understand. Like, be over here. Because there's still beautiful things. And I think even though, like I said, she's tiny and squishy, one day, one day I'll thank her, that Penny is teaching me to quiet the back seat of the sadness and the grief and to focus on all the good stuff that Penny can turn on. Penny can change the music. Penny can sit in the passenger seat.
Right.
And she's symbolic of all the good things, um, while still acknowledging all the bad things. So like every year since I've existed, my family
Hmm.
has Christmas Eve, um, made a Christmas list, and like it's in a binder that like we sit down. We were like hardcore, like write the letter to Santa, write down what you want that year, and then over the years you see it evolve. So like when I was like 8, 9, 10, I wanted only American Girl doll things.
Okay.
As a teenager, all I was a figure skater, and so I just wanted like figure skating stuff. Um, when I was 2, I asked for a hammer. Um, and here I am now.
It's all making
It all
sense.
came together. And I think so my part of the reason why I think my mom went like so hard into Christmas is she was raised Jewish. And so
Oh.
I'm part Jewish, so we have the whole menorah and the Christmas tree. But my mom growing up only menorah and saw all of her friends, Christmas and all of that. Um, and so when she married my dad, she was like, yes, Christmas, I get a Christmas. And then when my brothers and I were born, it was just like everything, just
Yeah.
everything was Christmas. But with this Christmas list, that was something that every year we'd look back at like what my brothers and I asked for and like whose handwriting was terrible and like who got out the glitter to like decorate the Christmas list. And I think as a kid, I didn't realize that not every family did that.
No, that's a
And
very cool idea.
yeah, and I got older and was like, wow, this was kind of unique to my family, just in the way that we did it. And so, I mean, year one, um, Penny's gonna have a Christmas list, and
I love that.
it's probably gonna just be full of like pickles and like the, the girl likes a pickle. Um, but that's something that I wish my mom could be a part of.
Right.
It's something that existed because of my mom, um, but she's not here.
Right.
And if I just spent the whole time focusing on that, my daughter would miss out on the first of a wonderful tradition. And in that way, I would miss out.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard because I struggle with the fact that like I know that I'm a person outside of being a mom. And that I have so many friends that aren't parents, that don't want to be parents, that want to be parents and aren't yet. And I don't ever want to say that like, oh, my life has purpose because of my child. My life has
Sure.
purpose separate of it.
Yeah.
But I think in a way that like the first year without my mom, I rewrote some stuff for my dad,
Mm-hmm.
and that gave me kind of a reason to do it. Because if it was just for me, I wouldn't have I wouldn't have like climbed that hill because it just would have been too hard.
Yeah.
But if it was climbing that hill for my dad, it helped. And now for Penny, I'll climb that griefy hill to make sure that like, you know, I'm I'm the mom for her that my mom was for me. Um, which is a whole other, it's a whole other can of worms because being a mom and not being able to call my own for advice is something
Mm-hmm.
I never thought I'd have to deal with.
Yeah.
You know, Penny has her first stuffy nose right now, which is like not a big deal. But
But
like
still.
I don't know what to do. Like kid can't blow her nose because she just figured out that she has hands that like so I need to, worry about like can she breathe okay? Like is this normal? And I I've just gotten it out of my system that the person I call for advice isn't here for my
Mm-hmm.
own life.
Right.
If I call her and I'm like, I had like a weird bug bite, is this normal? I can't call her anymore. And I just got used to that. But now I have a tiny human that she had a lot of experience with tiny humans that like I can't call her and be like, is this snot color normal?
Right.
Like,
No, for
so
sure.
it's, I think, I think it's a reminder that like grief comes in waves and all of the metaphors, grief comes in waves, they're the person in the back seat that like however you need to kind of remind yourself that it's always there. Now how do you deal with it?
Right.
And I think acknowledging that because it's hard and everybody deals with it in a different way. um and I know I've tried therapy. um I don't like talking about myself. And I mean, here we are on a podcast where
I was
like,
gonna say you're doing a great job.
thank you for forcing me out of my comfort zone. Um, but again, you know, I'm happy to share with you because I know that like, despite how they were taken away,
Mm-hmm.
we both lost the most important person in our life. And to be able to share that with somebody, like, gatekeeping grief is stupid because
Yes.
somebody else out there knows a little bit about what you're feeling. And I think when we lose the people that we love, we feel alone. And I'm I'm not going to replace your mom, you're not going to replace my mom, but the aloneness that we feel in the grief, if we can kind of give each other a little, I don't know, like a little koozie so it's not so cold and alone, that we can kind of
Yeah.
like help each other out a little bit so it's not so harsh and not so painful, we're reminding each other that we're not alone.
Mm-hmm.
And I just hope anybody that is dealing with grief I had a therapist that I had tried to find about, I think it was the first winter without my mom, and I just felt so stuck. I felt like the wires in my brain that were normally connected were like chopped, and they were just
Yeah.
fritzing, and I couldn't move forward, and I knew I needed to, just for my life, for my health, for my husband, for everything. And I looked for a therapist, and I started talking to one, and she told me that grief was a light switch, and I was just choosing not to turn it off. And I
Boo.
said, delete.
You're like, no, you're the
Bye.
light switch, and I'm turning
You're
you
the
off.
light
Goodbye.
switch. I want my money back.
It's so funny that you're
Uh,
bringing up therapy because Ashley, who I talked to yesterday, we ended up talking about therapy also, and how
mhm.
she kind of felt like she got to a point in the therapy where she was almost like it was feeling monotonous, whatever. And I said I did the same thing. I like went out of my
Mhm.
way to find like, somebody that I thought would be whatever. And I kept feeling
Sure.
like she wanted to fix a problem that I had, right? Like
Yeah.
most people our age, we walk in, it's like men issues, work issues, friendships, whatever, where there's
Childhood
like
trauma, like
different
unpack it
communications,
all.
right? Like maybe
Very real
try
things.
this, try
Yeah.
that. Absolutely. But I think she wanted that to be my thing. And I was
Yeah.
like, no, like, I'm here because, like, my parents are dead and I'm
Here's
only
the bullet point.
32,
It's really
right?
bold.
And, like, also the way that my mom, like, left this earth was so traumatic and
Yep.
whatever. And I just felt like she almost didn't know what to do with me. And I was just like, yeah, because, like, my problem is not something you can just fix. She's
Yep.
like, do you want to sit here and write? I'm like, well, I already write at home. And she was like, okay. Like, so I actually stopped going, but I was saying, like,
Yeah.
it's funny. I always feel like this is therapy
Yeah.
where you're like, I have a hard time talking about myself. I'm like, but you're doing a great job. But it's also like you're just
It's for
talking
a
to
purpose, though.
a fellow griever. Like
Yeah.
it's almost like a little bit of group therapy. I'm like, I just talk to different grievers. And, over time, like I am getting my feelings out. Like I'm sitting here so emotional about you talking about Penny and your mom because it's
Yeah.
like so like reflective of my sister. Like
Yeah.
my niece was 1.
Yeah.
And like my nephews, I think the oldest one at that point was 12. Like
Mm.
they're not gonna remember her. And that's
Mm.
like so sad to say. Timmy like might, but like I was
Yeah.
14 when my dad died and I feel like I'm like, do I remember him?
You hold on so hard. Yeah.
Right. So I'm like, that's why I'm getting so emotional about that because it's just like, yeah, it's true. And she was like, I haven't done teenage momdom yet. Like I got her infant advice
Yeah.
because she had,
Because
had
that was the
3,
time that you got with her. Yeah.
but she's like, now I have high school issues and big kids, big problems, and like
And you
I don't get to call
can't
my
call your
mom.
mom. Can't call your mom.
Yeah. So
No.
it's like
And
I just
there's
think it's
there's
funny
the
that.
there's so much mom guilt just chemically, and
Hmm.
then there's mom guilt from the internet,
Hmm.
from relatives, from other moms, and maybe being a mom without my mom will help me be a good one because I'm gonna, you know, try and make up for the late night phone calls or the advice, and I'll, you know, try differently than I would have if I had to rely on my mom. But
Hmm.
I don't know. I think there's no way to change the course of time that led me to being here without her. Um, and like you said, like with therapy, it's hard. The guilt of like again, like the internet telling you that like, oh, you're gonna be better if you can get therapy. I'm like, okay, will it please fix me? Because it feels like I'm doing all this stuff to be fixed and it's not working. And
Right.
talking talking about the trauma of losing my mom felt to me like focusing on all of the worst parts because there were so many. And
Right.
whether, like I said, with whether it's blindsided or drawn out, a cancer diagnosis that she was diagnosed and died within a year.
Mm.
So, as far as cancer goes, that was quick. And I don't know if that was good or bad, but I started processing losing her, like I said, on election day. Because I knew where I I like to think I'm a glass half full person, but like I kind of sensed where things were going and kind of started needing to wrap my head around it. Um, and therapy just felt more like you said, I didn't need to talk about like childhood trauma or like, the awful men that I dated that led me to the best one. I didn't need to talk about that. I needed to
Right.
talk about like bathing my mom
Yeah.
when her hair was falling out.
Yeah.
Um, I didn't need to talk about like, you know, childhood, you know, I just didn't need to. And so therapy
Right.
wasn't the right path for me. I did do EMDR.
You
Um,
did.
I did.
What do you think? Because so many people have like suggested it to me. And I'm like, I kind of want to do a series where I turn this into a TV show and I'm like, let's go do this therapy and that therapy, and that will be on it.
Bonnie, do it.
Really? Okay.
As somebody who really wanted to, like, talk about it and like get it out and like kind of leech the sadness out of myself,
Hmm.
that wasn't working. And I talked to a therapist, not the light switch one. She was goodbye. Um, she was out of there. I tried somebody else, and talking to her, I said almost exactly what you were saying, that I was like, I don't want to write. I don't want to focus on all of this grief. And I don't really want to talk about myself. There are bullet points I need to like, it's like a pimple, I need to pop it. She's
Yeah.
like, yeah, so that's the MDR. And I was like, there's a thing, this exists. She's like, she explained it to me, and I said, yeah, I need this out of my system. I need to, like, the wires,
Mm.
fix them, put them back together. I know it doesn't solve the grief. I know it doesn't take away the fact that my mom died, but I need to unstuck myself. And in a way that nothing else has helped, that did. And
Okay.
it sucked. Like it feels like Dementors, in the way that like you sign up for a Dementor to come and suck the sadness out of you. And you're like, why am I doing this? This hurts. Oh my God. Mom?
Yeah,
Um,
like the light.
so that's another fun one. In the way that my mom is also rainbows, my mom also does some like trippy things with lights. And that's one of those weird things where it's like you cannot explain the weird shit that has happened with electricity. I'll,
Well, I
I'll
mean,
do
that's
that.
like spirit's like number one way of communicating is
The number
through
one.
electrics.
We had told no one that we were going to elope. Um, my husband and I were planning to do this on a Wednesday after my mom died. There was a whole bunch of stuff where like Dave got really sick and was in the hospital, and I couldn't go in the hospital with him, um, because we weren't married. And after being in hospitals with my mom, you talk about like how you're not even setting foot in one.
Yeah, no.
I had to immediately. My mom died in August. Dave was in the hospital in September, and I couldn't go in. And the receptionist was like, "Are you his wife?" And I was like, "Give me a week." And so I'm in my kitchen painting my wedding dress that I was gonna wear when I eloped, and a light that had never flickered as I'm painting it, and I was on an ironing board in the kitchen. The light was flickering over my head, and it never did before, never did it after.
Mm.
Like, okay, my mom knew,
Yes.
whether it was that or a mouse like chewing a um that's one of those moments where I'm like, okay, that's my
No, I feel
token.
like
I've
if you
earned this.
intuitively feel that, like you gotta just be
Yeah.
like you wouldn't have been like, Mom, if it wasn't. You would be like,
Nope.
where's so like you
Like
just know.
something's weird with the light.
Yeah.
But in that moment, I needed that, and the light flickered, and she was right there. So okay, she
Yeah.
knew.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, EMDR, it it unstuck me,
Okay.
and I've talked to other people that it has unstuck them with like, stuff within like their marriage or with like past trauma or um my therapist, I was in a super bad car accident in high school, and the therapist that was doing EMDR with me was like, "Do you want to talk about your car accident too?" was like, we can do that.
Uh,
Like other trauma that was just living in my body and my brain, um, it made a huge difference. And I think it opened me up, um, because I don't think I was prepared specifically to move forward in my life as like a blanket statement. I wasn't ready to be pregnant. I wasn't, and Dave and I wanted a family, but I was like, it's the whole like you can't fill someone else's cup if yours is empty.
mhm.
Being a mom, your cup is like always like almost empty. I wasn't going to be able to fill Dave's or my future babies if I wasn't okay. And I feel like EMDR, I did 2 sessions and I did it virtually. I sat in my studio and literally like followed the bouncing ball on my cell phone.
How
And then the rest
interesting.
and then the rest of the day I felt like a dementor had like sucked my soul out. I cried so much. I felt like I had food poisoning of like feelings.
Mm,
And I slept for like the rest of the day and then literally the next day I felt lighter. And
interesting.
I've been able to I've been able to talk about things more openly and with less heaviness that I I thought I would never be able to confront. And I
Sure.
think like I mean when my mom was dying, she was having seizures and we all would kind of like be in the room with her and like, is this the last? Like,
Yeah.
and we made a playlist of like her favorite songs. We kind of had it at the red. Almost, it was almost the opposite of like now that I'm a mom, I'm realizing this is the first time I've realized this. Dave and I put together like a birth playlist that you like have
Uh-huh.
on in the room. And just putting this together right now, we made a playlist for when my mom was leaving.
Yeah.
And we had like Rocky Mountain High and Mr. Tambourine Man by Bob Dylan and Bridge Over Troubled Waters, like all of the songs that were like her, these matter to me songs.
Yeah.
And I, my dad and my brothers were all holding her hands. My older brother, I can like picture it almost like I was like above it,
Out of
but I
body.
wasn't. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Um, Yeah, and my older brother was holding my mom's toes. And he was at the foot of the bed, sitting on a chair, holding her toes. My younger brother was holding her hand, and my dad was holding, like, patting her head. And I was sitting on the bed next to her. Like, I'm literally, like, sitting cross-legged next to her. And we had the music going. And I had a timer going in between seizures when she wasn't, and I felt her last heartbeat.
Mm,
That sucks, dude.
yeah.
It sucks, but it also was a privilege. And I think being able to clear myself of that heaviness, um, through time, through EMDR, through reframing, um, that felt like such a burden to me for so long that that I had to sit there as a daughter losing her mom, watching her brothers and her dad lose the person that they love, that I got to feel. I had to. It was almost like cursed on me that I felt the last heartbeat.
Mm,
But then I felt my daughter's first one.
yeah.
That's awesome. And I think, again, with like the lasts and the firsts, I hope everyone in their own, when they're dealing with grief, that they have those moments of seeing the other side of things. That, like, if you did feel a last or experience a last, whether it was a holiday or a heartbeat, that somehow there's another side of things that,
Mm,
whether you kind of dementor the grief out of you somehow, It's never going to be all gone. Um, and it shouldn't be.
Right.
Like, it should never be all gone
Yeah.
because it means that they mattered and it means that they're still around.
Hmm.
Not in the way we want them to be, but I hope for people that there's a way, whether it's like reframing a holiday, like this time of year is so heavy. It gets dark really early, the days are shorter, uh, whether it's with the election or with like holidays, like weird like family dynamic of the people that like are still here, um, that you have to now navigate that without whether, it's us, like we lost, our moms and you lost your parents, that like you don't have a sounding board. You don't have
Hmm.
people giving you permission to like sit out Thanksgiving. But you're like, I'm busy, even if you're not busy. It's hard
Right.
not to have the people give you permission to just be in your feelings. But sometimes if there is a first, I hope that people know and like give themselves permission to let go of that heaviness a little bit,
Right.
and in whatever way that they can get there. That like, I feel like I'm giving a lot of credit to these like two EMDR sessions. Like they were great, but I've done more work on my own than
Hmm.
two therapy sessions. And
Yeah.
that's work that's been over time. That wasn't just like solved. It's just like, I don't know, I'm a fix it person that like if I see something, like what I do for work a lot is like I'll take something that's like busted and broken and I'll upcycle it, and like I take old suitcases and I rip out the like nasty lining and I reupholster it and I paint it and I cover up all the like blemishes and I make it nice. And I feel like if I don't give people a way to reupholster their grief, then I'm
Mm.
just talking about my own. And like, I, other people don't necessarily need to hear all the like gritty details of like my sadness. If I could make a tutorial of like, here's how to fix it. Like,
Well, that
dude,
it's
I'd do
that's
it.
the 5 stages of grief. That's like
Yeah.
that's the this is
Yeah.
how you feel it.
Mm-hmm.
I do. I mean, one, I feel like without you even realizing, like you do a lot of art therapy for yourself. It's a lot of like
Mm-hmm.
meditative movement. You get to like be in your AirPods, do your thing, which like,
Yep.
you're so used to it and you love it. But I'm like, that's like, we're creative people. And I think
Yeah.
that that's probably also like, thank God we have those things to like help us express things.
Yep.
Even if it's like, this is what I'm going to do with this beautiful case and make it beautiful, you're still expressing yourself and your feelings.
Absolutely.
Um, but also, I want you to plug Rally Bird brand because
Oh.
also, I mean, I'm like, this is the holiday season
Ooh,
and we are dealing with the grieving community, and you
that's
have done
true.
some really cool, like, what are they called? The little stuffed things.
The
Don't want to get it wrong.
punklings.
Your punklings. I
Punklings.
almost called them
Yeah.
pumpkins. I was like, that's not what they are.
It's how
But
the
like
name
with,
started originally. Yeah.
but like with the t-shirts and
Yep.
like those things, like I just feel like you make a lot of cool like memory
Yeah.
gifts.
Yeah. Well,
And I
it's
would
it's
love for our
funny.
listeners to know about that, especially during the
Okay.
season. So
Let's
please.
go. So, punklings actually started out of grief. They would not exist without uh, layers of grief. That during COVID, I sewed thousands of masks, and I got like good at sewing. I didn't. It was something I was like not very good at before. Got good at it, and but I had made so many masks that were for a sad, scary reason.
Hmm.
And as soon as COVID started lifting, I was like, I can't sew sad things anymore. What's one thing that makes me happy? And it was my nephew. And I mean, I lost my mom, he lost his nana. And they were like, whoa, just the best. And he loved little stuffed animals, but he also loved we always called it putting things in things. And so he would we'd open every drawer and we'd be like, Hot Wheels car, You'd open a pocket and you'd be like, candy. And so I was like, a stuffed animal that can hold the things that little kids treasure, even if they don't matter to other people. So I made a stuffy with a pocket, and it's reversible, so little kids can hide things in there. And it was made out of the sadness of COVID and the sadness of losing my mom, but it was the like, look at look at what's left and make something happy. And
Hmm.
so that's where Punklings began. Punklings, it was a name that my dad called me when I was little. Called me Pumpkin. Pumpkin, little brain turned into Punkling. And so all of the characters are named after nicknames of um, that my mom gave me, my grandparents gave me, and they're all gone too. So everyone is like an homage to someone that's not here that I loved. And the one character is called Wubby, which is the nickname, or not a nickname, it's like a code word. I was teaching my nephew how to say I love you when he was a baby.
Hmm.
And uh, my mom was out, and I really wanted her to come back and have him like say it. And of course, because he's little, he couldn't say it. But the thing that kept coming out was like a wubby, and wubby turned into like our little code word for I love you. So this character Wubby is the only custom. All the other Punklings are the four characters, and they stay the same. But the one people can send me pocket fabric because for years I made T-shirt quilts. Um, and people would send me like boxes of whether it was their like high school like show shirts or baby clothing, or I get boxes of like my mom passed away, here are all of her shirts.
Mm.
And not only was it really time consuming, it also got to be really heavy. um, and both of those things, I decided, I was like, I can't take on the time or the emotional weight
Sure.
of this
Hmm.
anymore. But what I ended up doing was kind of turning this one character of Punklings into a keepsake stuffy. So I actually just released a bunch of spaces of Wubbies today, um, that people can send in their like t-shirts or like baby blankets, and it's been a really really beautiful kind of combination of things I used to do with the t-shirt
Hmm.
quilts in a way that's a lot more aligned with what I do now, which is kind of memorializing somebody, but in a way that is for, you know, there's a new purpose, that it isn't
Yeah.
just in the realm of the sadness of kind of just like, here is this blanket that we don't touch,
Right.
mother's shirts. Like that's too hard, that's too heavy.
Yeah,
And I
then
would
you're
open the
like dealing with
boxes.
someone's like
Oh,
stuff, and like God forbid something went wrong.
oh my God. And it was like, do you want me to throw away the scraps? And like they all still
Yeah.
smelled like the person. And it was just, oh, so
Yeah,
it was
that's
heavy. And
I
after
would
losing
would
my
have
own,
never thought of that.
oh, after losing my own mom, I was like, I can't, I don't think I can do this anymore. But
Yeah.
now with the Punklings, that's a way that I can handle, but that also is still uh, honoring people who, with Rallybird still come to me for like, you can help me through this. And if
Right.
I can do it in a little way with like one pocket at a time, if
Right.
I can kind of make the world a little bit less griefy, um, I'll do it. And
Yes.
so, yeah, the Punklings they're available on rallybirdbrand.com. Um,
Period.
and so
Well, Mike,
there's a,
anybody's doing some online shopping, support a small biz, and also remember your loved one.
it's true. There's a way
And,
that we can
and they're
do it
squishy
all.
and soft, and even if
They
you don't
are.
need a
Here, wait. There's
pocket,
the, hold
like
on.
it
I'm
could
in
just
my,
be a cute throw
it's
pillow,
right here.
TBH.
There's this one. It's right there. And it has, hold on, it has a little pocket. It flips.
It
It's
flips.
invisible. Yeah. So
How cute.
the Punkling pocket on the I know this is a podcast, and for everybody who's listening, I'm very sorry. But the pocket, this part is the one where you can use like your t-shirt and or whatever you want.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, I'm
you're
just like,
squishy.
listen, we gotta support the small biz. I also just think it's like a beautiful tribute. And also like, like my niece is 4. I'm like, that's
Yeah,
like a fun, quotes, fun, um,
sure.
way to be like, oh, this is Cece's shirt and like give her
Mm-hmm.
something because she's like doesn't know what that is, who
Because
that
they don't,
is,
no, they
you
don't
know,
know.
for her to have and to love
But
and,
it's a way to keep it close without
yeah.
it being like in their
A,
face.
and like I said,
And
like you said,
and
don't
like
touch this quilt.
no, and when I when I got married, there Pinterest and Instagram tells you like here's the way to honor your mother at your wedding. And it's like everything is like here's the empty chair with a
I
photo
hate the
of your
empty
mom. And the thing is like my mom, we went through all the pictures, literally every single picture of her that ever existed. That like the woman hated dresses. I inherited like no nice jewelry. Everything was like macrame and like it's just like that was her. And so at our wedding, it felt so weird to even think about like here's an 8x10 of my mom. It like made no sense. And so we found ways throughout my wedding that like that to honor her. And I feel like I've been doing that throughout my life now without her, is that there aren't ways. And the thing is like if the 8x10 of your mom on a chair helps you, you've earned that. You do it. But
Right.
like when I was pregnant with Penny and people were like, are you going to name her Suzanne? I was like, no, no, I'm not. It's a lovely name, but I don't think in the year 2024 a little girl named Suzanne is really going to like thrive.
Right.
And so, we honored my mom with uh, Penny's middle name. My mom's middle name was Julie. Penny's middle name is Juliet. That, like, you find your ways to honor without, like, it being in your face.
Yeah.
So the little nickname or the little middle name or the Punkling Pocket or a not 8x10 of an empty chair, like, it's the whole Jurassic Park thing. Life finds a way. You just figure it out.
Or your Christmas list
Or
tradition.
the Christmas list.
That's
Maybe
like
Penny
such
will
a
ask for
nice,
a
fun
hammer.
way. Maybe she will. Or one day she might be like, why do we do this? And you can be like,
Be
because
like,
this is what we
because
did. This is
because
what
of
we do.
Nana. Hmm.
Right.
And they never
Absolutely.
met, you know. Penny
Right.
never got to meet her Nana, and but she got to meet so many other people that she's getting to meet so many other people that knew my mom.
Hmm.
And we've gotten so close. I'm so grateful that in my mom's absence, we've gotten so close to my dad and
Mm.
my brothers and I, instead of, the like kind of like fighting that comes along with like, well, I get this and like my grief is more important. My brothers and I are, closer than ever. And I know that not everybody gets that experience, but without Penny getting to meet her Nana and without me getting to have my mom here, what Penny does get and what I do get is the the beauty in what's still here.
Yeah.
And it's hard to focus on that some days when everything feels like stupid heavy,
Hmm.
but the heaviness is also important,
Right.
you know, because
Yeah.
our moms were important and the people we lost were important.
Right.
So,
Yeah. I think that's the recurring theme of every episode. I think every episode we've done is just like, it's okay to acknowledge the heavy, and when you
mm-hmm.
acknowledge the heavy or the feelings, like those like quotes lighter better days do
Yeah,
they even if you feel like 10% better, you feel lighter. So
yeah,
now that we're going into the literal darkness of the winter, allow yourself to feel the dark and the heavy,
mm-hmm.
because like maybe you'll feel a little bit better, and honor
Yeah,
thyself in
that's how
these
it goes.
annoying, holiday times of happy, jolly families all over your
Oh,
television,
just
you
the
know?
hallmark of it all.
Right.
No,
And
man,
if you've got a new baby to embrace, you are one of those jolly families. It just feels different.
it's just different. And
Yeah.
I think what you're doing is so beautiful, giving people you are the permission. you're giving people permission to feel the feelings and to know that they're not alone,
Mm.
that there's an outlet and there is a community, even if they're quiet, even if they're sad, that there are other people out there like us, that never wanted this. We didn't want to, go into the holidays kind of with I call them the bubble wrap days. Um,
Mm.
and the hard part is that like you don't know all the days you're going to need the bubble wrap. Mother's Day is one of them. Um, because every email, every post, everything is like, Mom, everything's great, everything's beautiful. And you're like, I'm just gonna wrap myself in bubble wrap and put on like horse blinders and just not pay
Mm.
attention to anything. But the hard part is you can't always know when that's gonna happen. And you kind of like, little old ladies with tissues just handing them out all the time. You're handing out bubble wrap to people whenever they need it. And I think that's a beautiful thing. And in a world where you never asked for what you're going through, you're helping other people that never asked for it either. And
Thanks.
I'm grateful for you.
Thank you. Yeah,
Yeah, buddy.
I'm a verbal processor, so this also helps me. Again, it's like my therapy that I like didn't realize
Yep.
was therapy until I
Mm-hmm.
started doing it. But thank you. I
Yeah.
I am now that we're getting the virtual kind of setup going, I'm like, let's do one a day.
Oh, the world is open. Let's
I know,
go.
like we're figuring this out.
Yep.
But thank you for joining
Of
the Grief and Girl
course.
podcast today. I appreciate you. I appreciate you sharing and being so vulnerable. I keep telling everyone through this season that like our vulnerability is actually our superpower. So
Yeah.
many people, like you said, even if they're quiet and they're like not sure how to share or get it out, it's like, we're hopefully someone is listening.
Yep.
I mean, again, why I started the podcast in the first place is I was like so lost. I was like, is there anything out there? Which, like, in reality, in that moment, there was not. But
No.
I
Well,
started the podcast to reach the masses and
there's
just
only so many times you can scream into the void before
right.
you start getting hoarse. And when you scream into the voice and there's an echo, you're reminded that like, oh, there's someone else,
Yeah,
even if it's quiet. And then you scream a little more, you can be a little more quiet, and then they get a little louder. And I feel like it's just a reminder that like the void is full of other people shouting,
yeah,
and shouting together is helpful.
yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, my friends that are listening, watching, thank you for tuning in to this
Mm.
week's episode. Make sure you follow Casey on TikTok and Instagram, right? At the
Yep.
Rallybird brand.
At Rallybird brand on all the things.
Know the at
No the. No the.
Rallybird brand. Know the. She is Rallybird brand, okay?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, check out all of her cool stuff that she makes. Get in that Etsy shop if you're
Thanks,
looking to
buddy.
memorialize someone for a younger person. You know where to find a cool gift. It is. It's a very cool gift.
or older person, any age person.
Truly, I might get myself one. I have a
Little.
Sanderson sister doll on my couch right now. Like, who am I kidding?
Yes. I mean, we all need something to hug.
Truly.
Yep.
And on that note, I will say to my listeners, we'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye, everybody.